Hello there, and welcome back to War Thunder 2 Napalm's newest news. And yeah, it's a few days too late, I admit, but you know, that's just being me these days. We have to celebrate Gaijin's 13 years anniversary, and this is the time around Halloween where there are a lot of discounts in many ways. You have different kinds of discounts, and we shall look into it from the naval perspective. So let's just have a look at what it is worth. So you have in-game discounts from the 24th till tomorrow, and you have 50% discount on vehicles for all nations for Civil Lines and Golden Eagles. So not just premiums for Golden Eagles, but also tech tree ships that you have researched but not purchased yet. And I do this every single time. I also do this approaching the victory sales that are around May. So this is something that you have to keep in the back of your mind. It's really worth it because it can save you a lot of it. This is sadly not for squadron vehicles, and let's just move on to 50% discounts for all modification, talismans and backups. And especially talismans are really interesting because let's say you researched a ship and you just played a few battles with it and you really like it, and now you have the chance to put a talisman on it. So you grind the modules on that ship much faster, researching its predecessor much faster, and it's acting RP wise like a premium for the rank below its rank and the rank above, and that comes much cheaper than the majority of available premiums. Especially the high tier naval premiums are extraordinarily expensive. And also 50% discount on a premium account in-game for 90 days and 365 days or a year. And in the Gaijin Net store, that seems to be a bit different than what you can get in-game, also for 180 days. And let's just say that is acting like a premium on everything that you play. And it really gets you to good results when you combine this with a premium vehicle and some nice boosters. And this is really important. Discounts do not apply to vehicles released in the Task Force and Leviathan's major updates, so the last two updates. And as I said, squadron vehicles, modification, talismans and backup for these vehicles. So that is a major drawback, and this is why you should always plan ahead. It is really worth your time. And yeah, let's just have a look at in-game what we can expect, and I want to go through all the naval nations, and I want to limit myself to Blue Water Fleet. If you want a similar recommendation video on Coastal Fleet, let me know in the comment section. If I'm not forgetting it, I'll pin a post, a comment there, and then you can vote if you really want a video. And if it gets more than 100 likes, I'll do a Coastal Fleet recommendations video. So for the US, I would say that starting here with rank 3 ships, and the package discounts will come later, and I will not distinguish between the two of them. So I think ships like the USS Frank Knox are really powerful destroyers. I have made so many videos. I don't want to introduce you to the well-rounded package of those US destroyers again in detail. Let's just say you have some armor, you have rapid firing guns, you have great AA capabilities, radar, etc. And yeah, if you can get your hands on something like the Frank Knox, Moffett, Davis, you know, they're really worth it. For light cruiser, USS Helena has a ridiculous DPM, but it used to be almost invulnerable. These days it is an RP Piñata. Then we have the Des Moines, if you can get your hands on, or the Newport News, which are very similar ships. They are piñatas. The front magazine is so exposed, I would not recommend going for them. 6-second reload is dramatic for 8-inch guns, but you know, so much is your magazine. when it reacts to hits. The USS Arkansas is one of those premiums that's really interesting. With a discount, you can think about playing it because you have 12 guns, 30-second reload, and 12-inch guns or 305mm guns that work. If you angle this, if you're not in an up tier, this is a good workhorse, you know? It's not a really extraordinary, exotic thing that survives everything, but it does the job. It's a good ship, right? Then we come to the Mississippi, and I discussed it with in conjunction with making the video about the Maryland. Mississippi on the if you have it and you want to put a talisman on it, yeah, it's relatively cheap. Currently you cannot get the USS Maryland with a discount. However, I want to summarize: 40-second reload and your all or nothing armor scheme with no turtle back, and your magazine being very explodey, let's put it that way. Even when angled, you don't want to rely on it, you know, is offset by the hilarious accuracy and the punching power that you have with this ship. It's not fun, but for a very well-disciplined player, this is it. Now, tech tree talisman candidates that I would pick. Well, first of all, when it comes to cruisers, I would go with light cruisers. And I would pick the likes of the Atlanta, which is ridiculous, but also very frustrating, or the Brooklyn and USS Fargo. Then for battleships and cruisers, I would not want to pick the normal heavy cruisers. Reload 17 seconds is too drastic. When it comes to battleships, I would go with the North Dakota in the tech tree because of 30-second reload and 10 guns. All other ships outside of the USS Alaska and USS Iowa have 40-second reload. That is dramatically bad in my books. The Alaska is a ship that I really love. 20-second reload, punching power of 14-inch-45s if I'm not mistaken, and good style, good AA, but you're also really vulnerable regarding your armor in a battleship fight. So stay in the back and snipe. But it is really good versus cruisers and battleships that are broadsiding. You just have ridiculous DPM. And yeah, if you have the Iowa, put a talisman on it. If you're wondering why my Iowa does have a talisman, I got it in a test drive from Gaijin, put a talisman on it and grinded it myself. It's a good ship and it is a worthy reward after all this stuff. Coming to Germany. And I like the destroyers, but I do not necessarily want to recommend them. There is the Z4, which is basically a US destroyer with 4 guns at 4.7. It's good. Something like the Z47, I'm not a fan of because you don't have base use AG, you only have normal AG. While you have some armor, you're not in the same fighting power league than US destroyers. It can get decent results, but I wouldn't rely on it. Then we come to the light cruisers, and while I really like the style of the Karlsruhe, Köln, Leipzig, Nuremberg, etc., they're too fragile. They can be handled at mid to long range even by a lot of destroyers. And if you're not experienced and you come under heavy cruiser fire, well, there is no tomorrow. This is again a completely different level of capabilities compared to the US light cruisers, which are absolute monsters in comparison. Now we come to the heavy cruisers, and this is where the fun begins. Prinz Eugen. My god, is that a good ship. I love it. Again, you have to angle the armor. If you get focus fired, you can easily you can get detonated, but my god, those guns, 12-second reload, high penetration power, style. I always love to go in this ship. These days 6.0 is a tougher environment than 5.7 by quite a bit, so it's not there where it used to be. That brings us to a talisman candidate, the Admiral Graf Spee. And to quote here Doomguy, the only thing they fear is you. The only thing battle cruisers and battleship really fear when it comes to heavy cruisers is the Deutschland class. 11-inch guns. You have a relatively low DPM. Your armor isn't the greatest. You can get detonated, but as a backline sniper, it is satisfying. And you have relatively strong secondaries. But if given the choice, put a talisman on the hipper. Then we come to those battleships, and they all have 20-second reload. They are the complete opposite of the US battleships. They are really more dreadnoughty, they are quite sturdy, and the 11 and 12-inch guns have this nice reload, and fighting cruisers with it is an absolute dream, because they cannot do all that much at long range to you, but you have to angle, obviously. But yeah, the Nassau, I like it. It's not the most flamboyant ship, and it's only equipped with 11-inch guns, therefore it has formally the lowest firepower of all those premiums, but I still like it. Dream ships are the SMS von der Tann. That used to be such a godlike ship. Absolute W. Derflinger is absolutely one of the best looking ships, and those 12-inch guns with 20-second reload, so good. And the Kaiser is the greatest disappointment. Factually, it has one of the highest DPMs in the game when it comes to capital ships. 20-second reload, 10 guns. But we will see the König coming after it before the Bayern in the next patch. And the König will be the most usable. It has the armor of the Bayern and the Kaiser, but even more usable DPM with 10 12-inch guns, 20-second reload, strong armor. We will have to see how it pans out. Then we come to rank 6, and this is where it really gets set apart, because I do not really like the Sachsen, the Bayern, the Satzjörg, and the Markensen and the Baden. They're all very similar, either with 350 or 380mm guns, with reload longer than 20 seconds, less guns, and they just don't work for me. But then we come to the Gneisner, the Scharnhorst, and the Bismarck. The Bismarck is a worthy prize. What an elegant ship, what a name, what a history, what a legacy, what a DPM in War Thunder, absolute brutal killer shells. And we come to this also with the Soviet premium ship. They don't have the best numbers, but my god, the combination of DPM, the precision, the resilience, if it is not this stupid barbette fire magazine detonation thing going on, and just the effect of the shells is absolutely fantastic. And that brings us to the Gneisner and to the Scharnhorst. Strong belt, even stronger turtleback, high DPM, even here with the 11-inch guns, with less than 18 seconds, I think 7.3 seconds reload. This is one of the highest DPMs in the game, and it's an absolute killer. You also have torpedoes, the AA is good enough, and same goes with the Gneisner. A bit higher in battle rating and with only 6 instead of 9 guns, but therefore the 38cm 52 SKC-34s. Fantastic. I think it's too expensive for a premium, but amongst the premiums, this is one of the best that you can get. Sadly, without a discount, because I think it's too new. And that brings us to the Soviets. Let's start with the destroyers. And yeah, there are some good ones. The Blagorodny has good torpedoes. It has those short-range rockets, which are hilarious to use. And the 130mm guns are also working really nicely. Those 45mm quad mounts, they're just ridiculous. And so this is one of the best bets. So the more modern destroyers like the Spokojny, Blagorodny, or Neustrashimy, they're really fun. Here you can also see that those torpedoes are really capable. Not going into too much detail, the Bravi is the first missile destroyer. I have a video on it. And then we come to the Voroshilov and the Kirov, and they have those ridiculous 180mm guns that can match German World War I 11-inch guns in terms of penetration power, but they are really paper ships. They're really, really fragile. The Chapayev, Sverdlov, and Mikhail Kutuzov, together with their Sherbakov, they are decent light cruisers. They will remind you of some of the American light cruisers. And then we come to the battleships. Poltava, Paritskaya Komuna, Imperatrica Maria, and the Ismail to a certain degree, as well as the Marat. They have a very similar style. They have brutal sap. Their AP is okay. 12 guns with 33-ish seconds reload. They are decent ships. They used to be much more resilient than they are now, I think. But when fighting cruisers and same tiered or battleships of the same battle rating, they still inflict a hilarious amount of pain. Marat might be interesting with a discount, but you cannot research rank 7 with the Sovietsky Soyuz. And let's talk about this. So Novorossiysk is a decent ship, actually. I really like it. It's based on it's a Conte di Cavour Italian class, so that is a good talisman candidate in my opinion. But the Kronstadt is just better. Be aware that even with angling, your friend magazine is detonatable, and then even in the barbette, the shells will disappear if they get hit, and then you lose all your ammunition and you sink rapidly, but you will stop at 4%. But you then have nothing more to shoot. So this is a bit more like the Alaska. The firepower of the 12-inch rounds, 20-second reload, is hilarious. It's full-blown Stalinium black magic. And the Arkhangelsk, that is trash. World War I shells, 8 guns, 30-second reload, not the greatest accuracy, slow. No, it's not cool. Then we have the prize, the Sovietsky Soyuz. That is just absolute Russian propaganda, the ship. Hilarious. Made a video about it. Yeah, this is a good prize, probably the strongest ship in War Thunder. And that brings us to the Sevastopol. Again, I think you will not get a discount on this, and it's simply too new. And it is basically the Kronstadt hull with the German 15-inch guns on it. Yeah, it's a project. It's too expensive, and even with a discount, I would go with the Kronstadt. It's a better ship. You lose half your DPM basically, and that's not cool. So I would go with the Kronstadt as a talisman and the Novorossiysk as a backup. Either with a talisman, that's your best choice. To get up there, you have alternatives like the Nostrashimi, the Blagorodny. They are really great. The Zelensnyakov is, in my opinion, maybe with a discount, it's okay to research than this, and from there you make either a penalty grind with the Zelensnyakov, or with the Ismail, you force then yourself to the Kronstadt, and from there you research them. Great Britain. Well. This is a bit interesting because they're not the most exciting ships in the tech tree, but I think that ships like the Cadiz, Haida, and HMS Diamond, they still can do things, but they just don't have the punching power or the DPM of the American or the Soviet destroyers. Nevertheless, they'll do their thing, although you sometimes have limited torpedo firing arcs, and those torpedoes are very capable. And they are a hidden gem, to be honest, but difficult to use. HMS Liverpool is an interesting pick, but I would go with the classic, the Belfast, if it is available. With those cruisers, it is difficult. The HMS Dido is interesting because you have a really interesting caliber and DPM and whatever. The heavy cruisers are not my thing. The county class, like the HMS Kent, Norfolk, and London, they are just not that great. I would go with HMS Southampton with a Talisman, and then you have the Dreadnoughts. Here it's interesting, if the HMS Iron Duke is available, that might be a decent pick with a discount because of 10 guns, 30-second reload, and you have this monster HE that is to this day the strongest in the game. Not even 16 or 18-inch guns will surpass this firepower. And if you angle it, it's a bit like the US Premium, not that all flamboyant aside from the skin, but it will do the job. I'm not a fan of HMS Dreadnought and HMS Orion in game. I'm also more on the side of Colossus and Rodney. Rodney has here the advantage compared to the Nelson that it has torpedoes, and I still think that Nelson, despite the fixed armor plates, is still somewhat bugged. I'm also not a fan of Repulse and Hood. They have too few guns with too long reload with too little real effect. So I think that I would go this line down there. And Vanguard is not all that great, and King George V class is still not yet announced, and that will be the best endgame reward for the tech tree. So to summarize, HMS Belfast, if it's available, it's a decent light cruiser, but you know, it's a light cruiser after all, or a Talisman for the HMS Southampton. I then would go with the HMS Iron Duke, or I would get myself a Talisman on the HMS Queen Mary because of the 13.5-inch guns. But the end game is here. HMS Hood is relatively sturdy when I fight it, but HMS Vanguard is just, I think, better. Then we have HMS Nelson. You don't get a discount, and it lacks the torpedo compared to the Rodney. It's too expensive at the moment and not good enough. Then we come to Japan. The Japanese tech tree is full of ships that launch a lot of nasty torpedoes. The IJN Nenohi, Yahanami, and Yugure. Not the Yugure, but those two, they start at rank 2 with some really dangerous fish. The Aichen Yukikaze, Hiroshima, Yudachi, they have, together with the Shimakaze, a lot of dangerous fish. Versus destroyers, not that dangerous, because it's mostly decided by a quick, dirty gunfight, and the Japanese destroyers only have normal HE, aside from some ships from the US tech tree, basically. And also the light cruisers do not really convince me. Where it gets interesting, therefore, is when you up-tier those destroyers into a battleship fight. But how to get there? Well, the Aichen Miyoko, with its 10 8-inch guns, has amongst the heavy cruisers some of the highest DPM. You also have those torpedoes, but with bad backwards firing angles or broadside. But it's a good ship, right? And so maybe you put a Talisman on the Aichen Haguro or the Tone. The Tone is really interesting because of that quad turret frontal firing group, if that makes sense. If you reverse angle it, you can fire your torpedoes, but it is a fragile beast. This might have the same DPM as the Prinz Eugen, but it doesn't have its sturdiness. But the torpedoes, they are quite something. That brings us to the Aichen Mikuma, and 10-second reload for those 6.1 inch guns, even though you have 15 while you are so fragile on your barbettes and turrets armor. I'm not quite a fan of it. So yeah, Tone Mogami with talismans, they are really good. Then we come to the Yamashiro and the Hyuga, and they don't have the best shells. Kurama is too much of a freak show, I would say. Haruna is okay together with Kirishima, but they only 8 guns with 30-second reload. I wouldn't go there. That brings us to rank 6. So we will see the sister ship of the Mutsu as a premium, and obviously with the next patch then there will be no discount. So that discount for this premium will be then I think available not for Christmas but for the victory sales in 26 in spring 26. However, we have the Fusa, the Ise, and they are nice ships. The Kongo is okay-ish, I would say, but really it's about the Mutsu and the outstanding Amagi. I love to play those two ships because, as you can see, we have a really great reload of only 24 seconds, and in the case of the Amagi with 10 guns, and there are 16.1 inch guns who do really not joke around. They have high pen, they have a decent yield, they do damage, they're accurate enough, you have a good battery of secondaries. While you may lack here AA capabilities, honestly that's not so much a drawback in War Thunder as it once was, or maybe in the future. And the Mutsu has more armor, and its sister ship will be modernized, and I think in its 44 configuration, I'm not quite sure, but it will have even more armor. I will have maybe a separate video on that on the dev server. And yeah, those shells hit hard. They are fun to play, those two ships. As you can see, I have a talisman on the Amagi and on the Mutsu. As you can see, that's really a bargain. In fact, I'm purchasing it right now, whatever. Then you have a decent lineup, and also with the premium incoming, it might be 8.3, I don't care. And here's the problem. We have currently the Aichen Yamato, and this is one of the last ships that I have to research. But yeah, it explodes too fast. This is really the outstanding factor. This frontal diamond-shaped like armor structure. No matter how you angle the ship, there is always a really flat surface, and it's too thin, and there is nothing behind it. Look at how high the ammo is above the water. You will get one shot so often. And reverse angling, it's the same story, my friend. Sadly, this ship is not good enough for War Thunder. Very often you get detonated before you can rotate your turrets on target. It's that brutal. You have on paper really thick belt and whatnot, but it doesn't matter. This ship will get killed very often as the first ship in the battle. In fact, there are some lower tier battleships that are so much sturdier, but Yamato I love to fight because they are just like the Newport News. You hit somewhere here and it blows up, giving you an insta kill. And her sister ship, which will be there and will be available in the next patch, same story, sadly. And that brings us to Italy. Very interesting, because first of all, the destroyers are not really that convincing. They have strong AP, but the DPM is that low and they are not really that great. There is the Ciniere, if it's available, but that is basically a US destroyer again. Then also I'm not so much a fan of the light cruisers, but they can do damage. They are good enough, and I think the peak performance is here the Duca degli Abruzzi. That is probably some of the best light cruiser, but compared to the US light cruisers in terms of DPM and sturdiness, it's just not there. However, I think that the Aren Polar is, for the reduced price, a decent pick together with her sister ship the Arenzara for a talisman. You have thick armor and you have powerful guns, but the reload is excruciating long with 17 seconds, which for 8 guns it's not the best, but you can make them work, and if you are disciplined and if you know what you're doing, you can make them work. Now, everything changes with the battleship in my books. It starts with the Aren Leonardo da Vinci. That is great. You have 13 12-inch guns. 30-second reload, but the servo is hilarious. I like this ship. You have 5 turrets, but you're also not the most sturdy ship, but you're also not a ship that explodes with the first shell fired at it, at least in my books. And the same goes for the Andrea. I also, as you can see, have a talisman on the Dante Alighieri. I like those ships. An absolute stinker is the Iron Francesco Caracciolo, because it only has this mediocre SAP round. There is no AP round, and for that, also with only 8 guns with 30-second reload, it's just not good. Also, avoid this. Don't make the mistake that I did. And then we come to the Iron Conte di Cavour and the Iron Duilio. They are fantastic. Those 320mm guns. I have some gameplay. Maybe you want to see a video. They have a low charge, but the penetration for this battle rating, for this caliber of gun, is nice. And you have 10 guns with a 30-second reload. You can take some punishment. Secondaries are not the best. AA is not the best. Who cares? The guns kill stuff. And I like that. However, the ammunition count is relatively low, so you can run out of ammunition, and you should prioritize on AP. Take maybe enough rounds for 10 servos of SAP versus light cruisers, but it's more efficient to go with exclusively AP. You need all the shells. For long battles you can run out. That's probably the greatest disadvantage, but for only here 1150, I'll take it right now. I just take it. The problem is that the Aren Roma is not good, and the incoming sister ship isn't good as well. And again, we have no premium at rank 6, and that brings us to the French. Now the French are interesting with their destroyers, because if you manage to hit somebody with those 138, nearly 139mm guns, it's going to hurt. But in most destroyer fights, you just don't get the DPM going, right? Then we have the Dugon 3. That is sad. I think at first it makes a great appearance, but it's only 8 6.1-inch guns, and after the ready rack is empty, your reload gets long, really long. And also the Duplay, as a heavy cruiser, once the ready rack is emptied, well, that's it. And you don't have proper AP, only this SAP that has a decent charge for an SAP round for an 8-inch gun caliber, but you have no AP. How do you want to fight a Hipper with that at range when it's angling? Yeah, you're not gonna have a lot of fun, because when it shoots back, your armor is also paper thin, so it's not really great. Out of desperation, I put a talisman on the Emile Bertin and the Colbert and tried to make my way through, but also when it comes to the Courbet and the Paris, Bretagne, Laurent, they are not good. The experience is miserable. Then we come to the Dunkirk, and it's a great ship in practice. It can have the style of a battle cruiser, of a relatively modern large cruiser, whatever you want to call it, and the AP is quite the monster. But you have 30-second reload, not 20-second, and that kills the ship. Also, that you have the following issue. If you look at the Dunkirk, its great selling point is that it has all the 8 13-inch or 330mm guns in the front. But when you try to angle, your belt and your bulkheads, they just don't add enough up to it. And yeah, then you detonate, and in the best case scenario your shell room gets hit, and then all your ammo just is gone from the front turret, reducing your firepower by half, which is already not the greatest. And reverse angling, yeah, if you make the turn, the rest of the ship is great. It could be good. If it would get like a 25-second reload, it would be more to play around with, but currently is not good. And the same goes for the Richelieu. I love to detonate them. They very often catch a salvo and sink before they can make the turn for reverse angling, which is great in theory, but you never really get it done in practice, and then you're out of the fight and really unflexible. The same goes with the Strasbourg and the incoming sister ship, I think. Yeah, so right now the French tech tree is the least attractive in my books, with Japan and Germany. For me personally, the USSR is probably the most efficient. Yeah, I would make the top three: the US, the German, and the Japanese, with the Soviet after it. And Italy, actually not that bad when it comes to capital ships. So Dunkirk with a talisman and very passive gameplay, hiding behind a rock, whatever, then you get results. But yeah, I made videos on the majority of those ships. Have a look at the videos for yourself. I hope you found this video not too long and not too tiring. And as usual, we will see each other after you have given this video a like and subscribed and have shared this link with your teammates and clan members and friends. As usual, on the battlefields, in the skies, and on the waves of War Thunder.